Assemblywoman Cottie Petrie-Norris. We are so glad to have you here.
Well, thank you. I am thrilled to be here. I feel like I'm with my long-lost cousin, the Johnson Norrises in the house.
You know, I will say, first of all, you are my Assemblywoman, which is an honor because I haven't interviewed anybody who's my representative. So I'm very excited about that. And then also the Norris namesake is an important connection because I am asked all the time if I am you.
That's so funny. That would actually be quite helpful if I had, a
Surrogate.
doppelganger. Yes, exactly.
An Irvine surrogate. But even when I ran for elected office in the past, I got confused. So right out the gate, I wanted to ask you, is there anybody that you get confused with, like in the assembly or in politics, that people mistake you for?
So what's funny is that a lot of the women in the legislature kind of get confused for one another. So one of my very dear friends who I started with in 2018, Rebecca Bauer-Cahan, to this day, like members of the lobbying corps will confuse us and get us mixed up.
And that could be helpful too. If you guys strategize together, you can at least kind of like knock out some of these conversations, not have to duplicate them.
Exactly.
But
yes.
I think that is something that women do experience more than men, I'm going to say, because I've been confused for other women in politics, other Democratic women or blonde women or, often. And so I'll ask you, you're also the first woman that we've interviewed, except for our chair, Florice, woman elected. What's that been like? Do you feel the import of being a woman in the assembly?
So, Lauren, it's been an incredible journey. When I was first elected to the assembly in 2018, so not that many years ago, and I may have told you this story already, we have 80 members of the assembly, 40 members of the California State Senate, so a legislative body of 120 people. In 2018, we only had 36 women. Fast forward to today, we are now at 59 women. We are this close to parity, and in 2026, we are going to make it happen. So the Legislative Women's Caucus has made this such a priority, and we've made amazing progress. And the other story I always tell on this front is that, again, when I was first elected in 2018, a former legislator said to me, "What number woman are you?" And I said, "Well, 36 of us. It's not great. It's an all-time high." And she said, No. What number woman are you ever? She said, "There's been about 4,000 men elected to this body. Go find out what number woman you are." And so I did. And it shocked me then, and it still shocks me. So I am only the 162nd woman, 162, to ever serve in the state legislature in the history of the state of California. I think right now we're up to about 210 women overall. So another way to think about it is that 25% of the women who have ever served in California's legislature are doing that work right now today, which is wild, right?
That is amazing.
Wild, but amazing, yeah.
And you mentioned, the Women's Caucus being involved in that. What do you credit, in addition, or if anything, to having more women in such a short period of time since you've been serving?
I think that we have made it a priority. I think it's like anything in life, right? You've got to articulate a goal, got to make it a priority, and you've got to put in the work. And we have worked to recruit women to run. We've worked alongside organizations like Emerge and others to help support women in that journey. And I think that one thing we know about women running for office is that we win as often as men, but there's oftentimes a reticence to run. And I think a lot of women are more likely to say, think of all the reasons why. Am I qualified? Can I make this work? Women need to be asked more. But once women put up their hands and run, when we run, we win. And so it's been an incredible team effort. And it's just been really, really exciting to be part of making that progress happen across the state.
Well, thank you for doing that, for being such a strong part of that. And that kind of leads me to where I want to go next, which is just more about your background, your family, and what did you do before you decided to run?
Well, as you know, but maybe some of the folks listening at home don't, when I decided to run in 2018, that was the first time that I had ever run for elected office. So I'd never served, I had never run, and that was my first time. My background was in business, so I worked in finance and technology for my career, both in large Fortune 500 companies as well as being part of small businesses and part of the founding team of a couple of startups. So I actually thought of my first campaign. I've approached it very much like a startup, right? Where you like get the whiteboard on the wall, bring together a kitchen cabinet, and really start to build something out of scratch. And so I think that that experience in the business world, I think, served me really well as a candidate, and I think it's also served me well doing this work and being representative.
And those are roles also in industries that are not women dominated.
Yes.
So you had some experience coming into politics already breaking ground.
That is so true. And I think, gosh, I'm probably a few years older than you, but I graduated from college in 1997. And that is not the dark ages, right? We found out after I had gotten my first ever job with a company I won't mention on your show, we found out that all of the women, so in our class of analysts, you had business analysts and you had operations analysts. Reasons that no one really understood. We realized very quickly that almost all of the men had been hired as business analysts, and all of the women, I think there's maybe 5 of us out of 20, had been hired as operations analysts. We also found out that while the jobs we were assigned to didn't depend on the title, we were getting paid 30% less. And a group of us sort of figured this out. And it was actually my boss at the time who was a man, but was an incredible ally who was like, that's weird. Why are they calling you an operations analyst? You're doing business analyst work. And that came with like a 30% increase. And then I worked with my cohort of women to draw attention to that and get everybody reclassified as a business analyst. So yes, I think we all have these stories where you're like, wait, what?
But not everybody does something about everything, right? It takes something in you to want to see change and to make sure that, you're willing to be in the front of that, right? And take any blows that come with it. But you did that, and that's amazing. So why did you decide to get involved in politics and run for assembly? What big change?
So I think, like for many of us across Orange County and across the country, the 2016 election really was a turning point, not just for the country, but for my life. I think like many women across this country, I woke up on the morning of, I guess it would have been November 8th of 2016, put on my little pantsuit to go to my election night watch party, thinking that we were about to elect the first woman president in the United States of America. And we all went to bed that night realizing we'd elected a horrific, unrepentant, misogynist, and racist instead. And so I didn't wake up the next morning and say, I'm going to run for office. But I got a lot more involved locally in the Democratic Party and involved in the state party. So I'd always been involved in our local Democratic club. I became an officer of that club. I ran to be an assembly district delegate. I got really, really involved in our local congressional races. I think that's how we got to know each other, was supporting Katie Porter the first time she ran, supporting Harley Ruda when he was running. And so it was actually as part of working on Harley's campaign that I got interested in running for the assembly seat. Because at the time, I don't know if you remember, there were like 12, it's the time when there were like 12 people running for Congress. And I was having active conversations with some of those candidates saying, yeah, we got to get rid of Dana Rohrabacher. He's terrible. But he's not the only incompetent, horrible representative that we need to get rid of. I said, so the gentleman I ended up running against was Matt Harper. Like, look at this guy. He's so wildly out of step with the district. He's anti-choice. He's a climate change denier. He's someone who is like outspoken, anti-woman, just, the list goes on and on. Why don't you run against him? And no one wanted to do it. And I finally said, I remember saying to my husband, would have been in like December of 2017. So it was less than a year out from the election. I said, I've got kind of a crazy idea. maybe I'm going to be the one to do it. Maybe I'm going to run against him. And I did.
And you
And
did.
here I am. Yeah.
Yeah. And that was an amazing race. I remember very well, like it was yesterday. Probably feels like a lot longer for you. But I remember how important that race was because, yeah, he was not representative of the values of
Yep.
the voters in that district. And then you came in and you started doing things with regard to climate and the environment that really reflected the concerns of your constituents in that district.
That's right. And at the time when I ran, that was it was a Republican district. So on paper, it looked like that seat was not winnable. I think when I decided to run, it was like an R+7 seat. And then by the time of the election, it was still an R+4 seat. So they had a huge advantage. But like you just said, I really felt like he was not reflective of the values of the district. He wasn't focused on the issues that people cared about. And so we talked to everybody. We talked to everybody about what was at stake with the election. And as you know, that was part of just this incredible movement across the county that I really do, believe changed Orange County, both for the better as well as permanently. Like we made so much progress in 2018. We saw a blue wave that elected record number of Democrats at every level of office. And I do think, well, the road of progress is uneven. We have continued to make progress, and I think we've got a lot to be proud of.
I feel that way too. I mean, it's been exciting to be involved in that for the last several years, especially because we know the issues that are impacted. When Democrats serve, Democrats address the issues that we care about so much. And so I remember when you came in and right away started doing things that had to do with conservation and had started to do things that it's not a partisan issue to want to have clean, healthy oceans, right?
Yep,
To want to not have
absolutely.
offshore drilling, to not, to do the work that a representative from a coastal district would want to do. And that was your district at first,
Yep,
right?
yep.
So I don't think that's a partisan issue, but if you have someone who's a climate denier, it sort of starts to butt up against their ability to get anything done.
Yeah. No, and I have, I think that I've always tried to keep my finger on the pulse of what I think the community cares about. And I think, fortunately, that's been very much in line with, my values and with my priorities and the things that I want to work on, for the district and for the state.
So at some point you got a new district though.
Yeah. So, as you know, and maybe folks listening know, every 10 years we go through a redistricting process and redraw the lines. And so in California, that happens with our Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission. So in 2022, our Orange County Assembly districts actually changed quite a lot. And so the district that I had been representing got split, almost in half. So the sort of 40% of the coast got aligned with a kind of long, skinny coastal district. And then the 60% that included Irvine and Costa Mesa got aligned with the rest of Irvine and added Tustin. And so it seemed like a natural fit for me to focus on those two cities that I'd already been honored to represent. So got the rest of Irvine and Tustin as part of that district in 2022. Gosh. So yes, it's almost like, it is amazing. It's blink and you'll miss it. So it's been almost 4 years that I've been serving under these new lines.
Yeah, time flies. It really does. And we've seen in that time your kids grow up. We've seen, so many changes in Orange County. I mean, all of our kids have grown up.
Yeah.
It's wild.
And I was talking to you the other day that now my oldest, I guess when I ran, they were 9 and 11. And so now I've got a 17-year-old and an 18, almost 19-year-old who's a freshman in college, which is hard to believe, wild.
And what's that been like for them? If they were here, we were gonna ask them what it was like to grow up with their mom being a legislator and being this important, impactful person in the community. What would they say?
I think that they would say that they're proud of me. And I think they would very obviously, it would be obvious that they're very supportive. But it's funny to me how quickly anything that seemed kind of, glamorous about this job just became sort of commonplace for them. So, you've been to the assembly and on the floor of the legislature. You've, I think, been there when the governor has addressed the body. Like, it's pretty unbelievable. I mean, sometimes like I walk in there and this is such a privilege for me to be able to work there every day. And I think the first time they were there, the first time they met Governor Newsom, it felt like kind of a big deal. And then it just became kind of like, they were there when's first state of the
Just a
state.
Wednesday,
And they're like,
right?
hey, yeah, what's up? What's like completely unimpressed and, not at all odd. But they are proud of me. And I do think that it has certainly informed kind of their sense of civic engagement and just civic responsibility. And I think that's something that's going to influence the course of their life, like, whatever they decide to do.
That's so cool because we want to raise our kids to be informed and engaged citizens, right? Part of a community and part of society. So to be able to give them those lessons and as their mom, right? Doing it in action is really special.
And it's been, I'll give a shout out to, my incredible husband, Colin, because as you know, with this job, we're away. It's almost like 50% of the time. So we're in session from January through September usually. And during the week, I'm there for most weeks, like Monday to Thursday. And so very quickly we had to adjust to that. And, we had to adjust to kind of juggling a lot of different things for our family. And I think that worked because my kids always knew that they came first. So if there was ever, an important event at school or a big game or something, I always made sure that I was there.
Wow. That's not easy to do. It's not easy to do even if you're not in the legislature. Like it's not easy if you have to travel just to, do your regular job in town. So to be able to be at all those
used
things.
to the Southwest shuttle.
Okay. You've mastered it. Yeah. Yeah. So tell me, what have been some of the things that you've enjoyed working on the most, or what have you accomplished that you're just so proud of?
I'll say that I think I've always been focused on what I would call just, kitchen table quality of life issues for Californians. And I really do think that is, what the legislature and what the assembly has been focused on, certainly last year and this year. So tackling the cost of living crisis, ensuring that our neighborhoods and our communities are safe, investing in public schools and in public education, and just creating jobs and investing in our community so we can continue to build the fourth largest economy in the world. And as you know, I for the last 2.5 years, I've been the chair of the Assembly's Committee on Utilities and Energy. And so in that role, I've been really focused on bringing down energy prices and on accelerating the pace of California's clean energy transition. And when we talk about the climate crisis, it's also such a big part of our affordability crisis. So it's because of climate change and climate-driven disasters that we're seeing insurance prices go through the roof, that we're seeing utility prices go through the roof. And so that's why there's just so much urgency for California to continue to act and to continue to decarbonize our economy and build a clean energy future.
All of this sounds so complicated because we're talking about environmental things, insurance, housing, all of these things intersecting. And it's complicated for a lot of folks to understand how those things all impact each other. But if there was one thing that you would say that California is working, the most on, one piece of that's simple for our audience to wrap their heads around, what do you think that would be? Like, what is the thing we're going to champion?
So we are focused on driving down the cost of living. I think we all recognize from rent to gas to utility bills to groceries, so many people are struggling. And day one of the start of our legislative session last year in 2025, the Speaker of the Assembly, Rob Rivas, made it very clear that his number one priority and our body's number one priority would be focused on cost of living.
Well, it is so expensive. I mean, people do say they'd love to live in California, but it is so expensive to live here, be it the housing or I know we're all impacted by the cost of groceries, the cost of fuel, all this in the whole country, right? But especially in California. And some people say it's because we regulate more or other things. But, what can the legislature do to bring those costs down?
So guess I'll start with the bad news first.
Sure.
The bad news is there's no on any of these fronts, there is no silver bullet. So there's no one thing that we can do to wave a magic wand and lower prices by 25%. But what we have been really focused on doing is, I think, tackling each one of these key drivers in a meaningful way. So on housing prices, we know that one of the primary reasons we've seen just, out of control housing prices has been a lack of supply over, and it's a problem that's been decades in the making. So can't solve it overnight, but we've taken some very big steps to make it easier, to build and to build smart in and across the state. So on utility bills, again, we've taken a very hard look at every aspect of our bills, and we've worked to pull some things off the bill. I've authored a number of pieces of legislation related to that. In terms of other costs, I'll say I think we are also dealing with some real headwinds from the federal government. So tariffs, like the trade wars, just the instability that we've seen under this federal administration has made it incredibly difficult for companies and for anyone right now to navigate this just crazy and unpredictable maelstrom that we've got at the federal level. So that is unfortunately raising prices of everything, but we're doing everything that's within our power to push back on that. And I think the other thing that I've been I've tried to be that I've tried to do throughout my career, I think, is be really honest with the public and force my colleagues to be honest with themselves about understanding where we're making trade-offs. So you started to mention, people talk about regulations. Yeah, there are some places where regulations are raising costs. So we need to understand that and understand where does that make sense and where does it not. And so that's another, I think, ongoing conversation, is to make sure that the environmental goals that we've set for the state, the environmental regulations, that's not just smart policy to deliver on our climate goals, that long term is bringing down costs for Californians as well. And I think especially when we're talking about climate issues, I'll say, I was just having this conversation with my staff, so it's really front of mind. We've got to get smarter about, and I say we as in, Democrats across the country, and I think, certainly Democrats here in California, about how we talk about these issues. Just today in, big piece in the news is that Trump is reversing basically a foundational Obama era finding that has kind of underpinned the government's ability to do anything to regulate greenhouse gas emissions. Essentially, a foundational finding that greenhouse gas emissions contribute to climate change. So they are just mounting an all-out assault on clean energy and on America's clean energy future. And they're doing it under an argument that this environmental agenda, this clean energy agenda, is raising costs for Americans. There couldn't be more lies in what they're doing, because, A, we know the climate change is real. B, we know it's also really, really expensive. And C, the clean energy resources that we're bringing onto the grid today are cheaper than fossil fuel alternatives. So we're actually lowering costs. So just reading sort of the narrative around that makes me realize I think we've got to just be really consistent and really firm in how we communicate around those issues to make sure that we don't continue to lose ground, and to cede that narrative to the Trump administration when they're telling, bold-faced lies that fundamentally conflict with basic science and basic facts.
I don't know how they can say that it's cheaper to have oil and gas run amok when they don't even control the prices of that. The industry does, right? And can vary that at their whim. But what I will say is I appreciate so much you breaking down in a very honest way what is doable, what is not immediately doable. We don't have a magic wand to solve all of these problems, because I think sometimes people feel that people run for elected office on the promise of waving a magic wand and
Right.
making promises they're going to do things that some of us hear and say, how, but how? Right? How are you going to do?
Right.
And that can't really happen because of this, that, and the other. Then they get in office and the voters are disappointed. They feel like they
Yeah.
were lied to.
And I think that that really just destabilizes public trust. And I think we are at a moment right now where people's faith in government, people's faith in our institutions is at something of an all-time low. And so we've got to be straight with people. We've got to be honest about the challenges. I think we need to respect people enough to explain things in a real way. And, whether it's Trump's outlandish promises or even, some of the unrealistic promises you've seen on the California gubernatorial trail, I think that ultimately just really pisses people off and just leaves people feeling even more frustrated.
And then they don't vote.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
what happens. They don't vote because they think all of this is BS. None of this is going to improve my life. And these folks are grifting or they're trying to get, access to things in power that won't benefit me. So I really appreciate how much you always have been very straightforward, but able to articulate kind of complicated things to voters and to us in the party in ways that people can understand. And I really appreciate what you said about it being a trade-off, because we know that not everything that we're going to grapple with in society is easy, if anything, right? But there are trade-offs. We have to decide collectively where the lines are,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
what we're willing to pay for, what we're willing to tolerate. And I think we're seeing that on the national level. What are we willing to tolerate in order to be in this free society, right? We're seeing it on local levels. What do we want our communities to be like? So I just want to say thanks for being a voice that's always made sense in these conversations.
There's common sense is not that common anymore, it sometimes seems.
It sometimes seems, but it is challenging because we want young people to have confidence in their electeds in this system, right? We do the work here at the party to communicate the message to lots of different people, but that's not easy in this day and age. Like you said, lies, false information, is out there, and we have to rebut that.
And so let me ask you a question. I'm going to turn the table. Okay. So we are, so it's February of 2026. So we are 9 months from the midterm election. How are you feeling about the excitement level on the ground in Orange County right now?
I will say that I have not seen people more upset with what's going on in the national level in my life. And I think that I don't want to overestimate results because we take nothing for granted. We will rely on all of our traditional methods and new methods to reach voters, to get messages across for our local candidates. We will knock on doors. We will communicate in all the modern ways. But I have never before seen in my adult life the upset and disgust at the way that regular community members, Californians, and people across this country are being treated by the federal government. And if this is not a moment for people to come out and say, no, enough, I don't know what moment would be.
Yeah.
So that makes me hopeful. I wouldn't do this work if I wasn't hopeful that at the end of the day, voters will come out and express what kind of America they want to see, what kind of California they want to live in, from the top to the bottom of tickets.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that there is just a huge enthusiasm gap.
I think that's
now. And yes, the agenda of the federal administration and the way that it's being carried out across the country, I think has been horrifying. Yeah. I think not just for us as, Democrats who are, either serving in office and actively involved. I think for people of all parties, it's really terrifying. It's scary. And I too am also, I guess I too have to be hopeful and optimistic, right? You've got to, I think, be that to get out of bed every day and keep doing this work. But I am hopeful that will translate at the ballot box, and that this really is going to be an opportunity for us collectively to really stop the most dangerous elements of this agenda, right? We know, like, Trump's not on the ballot in 2026, but if we can take back the House,
We're
and
close.
if we can take back, and even more if we can take back the Senate, but even if we just take back the House, we really are going to be able to stop, I think, the most dangerous aspects of his agenda,
Well-
which is so, so critical. And I'll say, as much as I think California, I think serving in California politics right now, and in the legislature right now, it is a little bit of a split screen. I talked to you about how we're laser focused on tackling the kind of kitchen table quality of life issues that keep so many people up at night. And we also continue to be the tip of the spear in the resistance to the Trump administration and their very dangerous agenda, whether it's through lawsuits that are being led by our Attorney General Bonta, or from the consistent pushback that you see from us on a policy level as well. Like, I think we feel a very real and serious responsibility to, again, do everything in our power to protect all Californians.
Well, I think Californians feel very glad to be in California right now.
I think so too.
I mean,
Yeah.
I hear that a lot, and I feel that very much in terms of reproductive rights, in terms of our immigrant communities, in terms of wages, in terms of all of the ways that we protect our California residents, wherever they come from, however long they've been here, right? We protect those people who are part of the fabric of our community. And I think having that be under assault by the federal government in so many different ways should wake Californians up. But we know we have a reliably blue state in most of the places. Not all, but in most of the places. In Orange County, we've done such a great job here. The question will be, what about what the rest of the voters, what will they do in this country? And we will see. I'm hopeful. I'm really hopeful. But again, we never take anything for granted, right? Like never, because we need to reach every voter, and we need to reach them persuasively in a way that they understand that we're on their side.
Yep. And I do think it's super important for us, like, not just in California, but for us as Democrats nationwide, to make sure that we have, like I said, sort of a split screen policy where, we're really very clear in our opposition to Trump. We're very clear in the resistance, and we're focused on explaining to voters why Democrats at every level, a Democrat in the White House, in Congress, in Senate, in your state legislature, it's going to make your life better, right? And so I think we've got to make sure we're communicating both of those, and it's so hard not to get dragged into this rabbit hole where everything is about Trump, right? Because there are so many.
It's not enough.
It's like there is, to say there's an outrage every day is an understatement, right? Like, over the weekend, I think everyone saw just, the horrific social media posts that he did depicting the Obamas as apes, and the fact that is, one of many things we have to be outraged about. I think we need to respond. We need to be very clear in our condemnation, and we need to present, I think, a clear and compelling alternative to voters that's really centered on the day-to-day issues they care about.
Absolutely. So you may know I'm a criminal defense attorney by trade. I have a question about some of the work that you've been doing that's been really impactful in the state around drunk driving and traffic safety. I know a lot of my colleagues are interested in it, and the public is interested in it. So tell us a little bit about how you're keeping folks on the road safe and what those bills have been about. What have you done?
So I'm actually super glad you asked about this. We have a big press conference on Thursday about a package of bills that's focused on protecting Californians from drunk drivers and making our roads safer. So, as you know, but maybe some folks don't, California over the last several years has seen a precipitous rise in deadly accidents and injuries because of drunk driving. At the same time that most of the country's actually seen accidents and fatalities go down. So I think a lot of us have looked at those statistics and met with people across our communities and heard they're just horrible stories. And I think, want to figure out what can we do to prevent what truly are preventable tragedies. So the space that I've been working has been really focused on expanding California's use of ignition interlock devices, so breathalyzers. So right now in California, if you are convicted of multiple drunk driving offenses, you're required to install a breathalyzer for a period of time. And we don't have a requirement for folks who have been convicted of one drunk driving offense. 35 other states have implemented laws that require someone who's got one drunk driving conviction to install a breathalyzer. And guess what? They've seen accidents go down. They've seen fatalities go down. And so we are working to implement that same requirement here in California and working with an incredible coalition of partners, and a lot of support from MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Drivers. So this is something that I'm incredibly passionate about. I think as a mom, when you read these statistics and you read these stories, it's heartbreaking. And as a policymaker, I feel both a tremendous opportunity as well as a tremendous responsibility to do something about it. And so I think this bill, the way we talk about it is this bill is an opportunity for us to save lives before the car even starts.
Well, I'll tell you, in my opinion, it's a fantastic idea. And for reasons you might not even have thought of. So when somebody gets a DUI, in the past, their driver's license would be automatically suspended, even for the first time. And what that means is that person can't get to work, even if they're sober, right? And we see people who will go into treatment, become sober, but because they can't drive, they're not able to meet their obligations to their families. But I love the use of technology as a way to make sure that people can still drive safely if they can, but also making sure that the roads are safe. Installing a breathalyzer to show that you're sober is sort of a no-brainer when it comes to using technology in a way that benefits everyone. It gets somebody back on the road to be able to go to work. And it also keeps the public safe because that driver's not impaired. Can't consume
100%.
any alcohol. So I love the use of the technology as a way to solve these problems, really from all perspectives. I know the drivers who, listen, sometimes people get a DUI because the inherent nature of alcohol is you miscalculate or misjudge your impairment. That's part of what alcohol does. People make a mistake. They might make one-time mistake, but we don't want them back driving on the roads impaired. And we also don't want them to lose their job, right? So I will say this has been something that I've seen in my world that's been terrific.
Yeah,
Actually,
good.
a really great way to solve this problem. And where we can use more technology to solve these problems together as a society to keep people safe, why wouldn't we? Why wouldn't we do that?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's like common sense step that will save lives and keep our communities safe. So I'm very hopeful that we're going to be able to get that bill done this year.
Do we know why our state is so impacted by DUI when other states aren't? Do we just have more drivers, or is there any information you found out?
So it's really scary and really, really, it's terrible. So California has, on a per capita basis, so not the fact that we have big cities, on a per capita basis, we have 8 of the 10 deadliest cities in the country because of DUIs are here in California. And in large part, it is because we have laws that are, in my opinion, just too relaxed as in response to first-time offenses. So, like you said, I think that the approach that, we're not putting anybody in jail, we're not taking away anyone's license, we're not taking away their ability to get to work and earn a living, but we're asking them to install a breathalyzer for 6 months to demonstrate that this isn't going to happen again. And, we see the stats are just so clear that this works and it's effective. It reduces recidivism by something like 70%. So we've been working on this bill for a couple of years and have struggled a little bit with the DMV and with agencies to kind of get the appropriate alignment on funding and implementing the program. So we've been in conversations over the fall recess with the governor's office and with the relevant agencies to hopefully get some of that resolved and get it done. Because sometimes that's one thing about this job is that you get sort of, you do sometimes get lost it's easy for things to get lost in the bureaucracy. And I think it's important for us all to see the forest for the trees. And it's like, we got to find a way to get to yes on these things rather than, sort of business as usual and get something implemented in 2037, which when we know we need to save lives tomorrow. So we're today.
It's the implementation, not just the great ideas.
Yes.
Right. That you guys have to get done.
Totally. And that's been another kind of through line in my time in office is, again, as somebody who's a business person, and was my background, I'm very used to a world where you set a forecast and you've got monthly, weekly, daily reporting where you're tracking, is this working? Are we on track? What do we need to do different? And I do sometimes think in the legislature, it's, I think, very easy for folks to kind of pass a bill, have a press conference, and then think problem solved. And so I've been very, very focused on oversight, implementation, evaluating whether or not programs are working, are the dollars we're investing doing what we thought they were going to do? Because if not, let's put them to work doing something else.
Well, thank you for doing all of it, right? Nothing like a professional mom to do all of it and make sure every aspect of it gets done. We're so grateful for you and your service. I just want to thank you. And I want to thank you so much for being a part of the podcast today. I'm going to ask you one last question, which I had on my mind, because you, to me, model some of the most effective communication to voters, also to Democrats on some of these most technical issues. And you do it in a way, I think, that puts people at ease, but also makes a lot of sense. We talked about. We have young women and young people who are looking to run for office, but it can be discouraging. As you know, it can be discouraging to know that you could face people who are really, really mean to you, people who misconstrue what you say, use it against you. If you had advice to give to young people, particularly young women who want to run, what would you tell them? What would you say about running?
I would say two things. So the number one thing I would say is just do it. I think that we all have kind of this little voice inside us that at various times in your life will kind of be saying like, go this way, go that way. I think it's super important to tune into that voice and to listen to it. So, for folks listening at home, if there's a little voice inside you saying, interested in running, like take that first step, find out more, get involved with Emerge or another candidate training program. Because I think those folks can really help you find a way to tell your story and help you evaluate if this is like the path you want to take. I will also say, like, you've got to have tough skin and expect that this job is going to come with slings and arrows, and you got to do your best to not take stuff personally, even when it is, and just stay focused on the journey, stay focused on the work, and stay focused on the people who elected you to do this job.
Terrific advice. Thank you so much, Cottie. I really appreciate you being here with me
Thank you, Lauren.
today.
I appreciate you.
I appreciate you. Thank you.